is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to The World Today, live from CGTN in London. I'm Stephen Cole. Our top stories. Meeting the world's climate goals. A major summit in South Korea looks at how it could be achieved. The Chinese and Irish foreign ministers meet for talks at a critical time for China-Europe relations. Mali's military coup commander meets West African leaders for emergency talks on the country's latest crisis. And the Belarus president takes to the waves while Russia's president waves through another $500 million loan to the country. But first, a major international climate meeting has started in Seoul, discussing how the world can transition to green growth and meet climate targets at the same time. The P4G summit comes amid growing calls for a sustainable green recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang has addressed the event, as Jack Barton reports.
Well, Premier Li began by talking about the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic is still raging around the world, and that it was creating uncertainty and instability, and that those factors were on the rise. So when he spelled out three key points that he said were needed to develop a greener future, the first was for the global community to pool its resources. We heard a little bit just before about what he was talking about there. But the bottom line was that if COVID is not dealt with all around the world, if every country has not dealt with the pandemic, then it will continue to plague other countries and the pandemic will not be over. So the key here to heading towards the green transition is to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. Then he said, secondly, once that is dealt with, countries needed to move on to that green transition, to change their technologies, to shift their economies and the way they do business, and to ensure, he said, that the temptation to go back to old growth models is avoided. And finally, number three, he said that all countries had to reach out to developing nations, or advanced economies have to work with developing nations to ensure they have the finance, to ensure they have the capacity, the infrastructure, to also be involved in this green transition and meet the same goals that the developed countries are aspiring to, so that all nations can reach this goal together. He reiterated China's goals of being carbon neutral by 2060 and also by peaking carbon emissions by 2030. And he said China remained committed to these goals, though he's admitted it was going to be very difficult to get there. But he said that the international community had to come together, they had to move in this new direction. And he said he described this current period as make or break in terms of where we go into the future.
That was Jack Barton reporting. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has met his Irish counterpart Simon Coveney in Guiyang, southwest China. Both sides are looking to strengthen trade ties and shore up cooperation amid a bumpy time for China-Europe relations. Sui Wei Ao reports.
Simon Coveney is the third European foreign minister that Wang Yi is hosting here in Guiyang, and the atmosphere was very relaxed and friendly at the meeting today. Hours before the meeting, Coveney paid a visit to a tea plantation nearby. He said he was impressed by just how modern the plantation is and that it was turned into an attractive tourist destination. He said he's been to at least 8 Chinese cities as part of his duties with the Irish government, but this was the first time that he saw a rural side of China that is thriving as well. On China-Ireland relations, the minister said bilateral ties are important to their governments. For instance, Wang said the meeting is an opportunity for both to learn more about each other, especially since the two nations are very different in history, culture, and social systems. Coveney says Ireland wants to build partnership with China. We know China is Ireland's largest trading partner in Asia, and today Coveney said he wants the relations to be a two-way street, saying Ireland sells 85% of everything they produce and has the most open economy in the world in terms of international investment. Now, the trade links are facing some uncertainties, though, given the meeting comes at a time when EU-China relations are at a low point. The European Parliament had a landslide vote to put the long-negotiated investment deal with China on hold. They say they're not going to start rectifying the process unless China lifts its sanctions on EU officials. But it was the EU that imposed the sanctions first, citing reasons of the so-called human rights abuse in Xinjiang. And that was the first time that the bloc had imposed punitive measures on Beijing in 30 years. However, Ireland, one of the members of the EU, is not taking a harsh stance over China's Xinjiang policy. Earlier, Coveney told reporters that he thinks genocide is a strong word, and he believes a relationship with China is an essential reality given China's huge economy. Ci Huiyao, CGTN, Guiyang.
Russia will move ahead with a second $500 million loan to Belarus, following talks between the leaders of both countries. It comes amid continued international condemnation of the forced grounding of a passenger plane in Minsk and the arrest of a journalist a week ago. Julia Chapman is in Moscow. Julia, I suppose the significance of this two-day meeting was the timing.
It was indeed, although this was a planned meeting that was planned a long time ago. It came at a very particular time, just days after the plane was diverted into Minsk and the opposition blogger was arrested. President Vladimir Putin and Alexander Lukashenko were pictured being very friendly, very casual on Saturday when they took a yacht trip on the Black Sea. They were laughing together, they were watching dolphins in the sea, and they were pictured having dinner with Alexander Lukashenko's young son as well. And of course it came after formal talks between the two presidents, where President Vladimir Putin said that he was going to push the green light on the second tranche of a big $1.5 billion US loan to Belarus. Of course, this was already money that he had promised many months ago, but of course the timing now really sending a message to the West that although Belarus is coming under immense criticism for its actions in diverting the plane on Sunday last week, that it still has friends, and that is, of course, the biggest friend it has is here in Russia. There was also the question of the Russian citizen who was arrested alongside Roman Protasevich, Sofia Sapega, his girlfriend. President Putin reportedly asked about her status. There are also reports that she will be charged tomorrow on Monday, and that she could face charges that would possibly land her in prison for 15 years.
We also saw, Julia, didn't we, solidarity protests around the world on Saturday to show support for the Belarusian opposition. Tell us more about that.
That's right. These were rallies that were called for by Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the exiled Belarusian opposition leader, and they were planned to mark a year since the arrest of her husband, who had been planning to run in presidential elections last year. She ended up running in his place, and he remains behind bars to this day. But of course, now that the news agenda is back on Belarus, Tikhanovskaya has been trying to draw more attention to her cause, trying to call for other countries to help the Belarusian opposition get into power. Of course, these were solidarity rallies that we saw across Europe, and she thanked many Western leaders for their support. We also heard from the parents of Roman Protasevich, the Belarusian blogger. They were attending the rally in Warsaw, and his mother spoke to the crowd, calling for her son to be released.
And thank you very much, Julia Chapman, in Moscow. A senior UK minister says it's too early to say whether the nation's lockdown can be fully lifted as planned on the 21st of June. The roadmap could be thrown off track by a rise in cases of the COVID-19 variant. First round in India. Andrew Wilson has the latest.
The UK government is under enormous pressure, much of it of its own making. The public were offered this end date of June 21st, long before the variant first discovered in India was identified in the UK. And of course, now it's become a success or failure issue. Had the government used data instead of timetables, things would be easier for the ministers now fielding those difficult questions.
We will share the evidence with the country on the 14th of June to basically explain exactly where we are on infection rates, on hospitalisation and, of course, sadly, of death.
There's no doubt infections and hospitalisations in the UK are on the rise, but so far it's mostly younger patients who haven't been vaccinated and aren't getting seriously ill.
But on the other side, and this is where the risk is that we know this variant is much, much more transmissible, and we know that there are lots of people who still need a vaccination. So there is a set of really difficult trade-offs that need to be made here, and that's why we need a really good, high-quality debate about how quickly should we open up on the 21st of June.
Europe, by shutting its doors, is making up its mind a lot earlier. The view from across the Channel is that British travellers, because of the new variant, are problematic. First it was Germany, then France, starting a 7-day quarantine system on Monday, and now Austria, banning inbound UK flights from June the 1st. Even so, the inconsistencies are still glaring, with Spain and Portugal more than happy to risk high numbers of British tourists because their economies depend on it. Contrary to popular opinion, this pandemic appears to be far from over. Andrew Wilson, CGTN.
Blue celebrations took over the Portuguese city of Porto on Saturday night as Chelsea won the Champions League final. Mia Alberti was there to sample the atmosphere as Europe's biggest trophy was won by the West London club.
Well, it's a true party atmosphere in Porto as soon as Chelsea won the Champions League final. We were actually standing outside one of the fan zones in Porto where Chelsea supporters were watching the match. And so as soon as it ended, we just heard lots of chants. And as you can see, a lot of supporters are very happy about the result. Let's hear from some of them.
Ecstatic! Unbelievable!
There is no word in this planet to describe how every Chelsea soul out there in their feels.
I liked it. That's brilliant. What a job we've done on them. Stopped him playing, can't he? What a player. Best in the world.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Twice. Only club in London to win it twice.
Well, there were 16,000 supporters watching the game live in the Dragão Stadium here in Porto, and most of them are expected to return to the UK this same night in charter flights organized by the teams. But there are also hundreds of people without a ticket that came to Porto anyway, even earlier than the day of the match, and those are expected to stay in Porto for the night for the celebrations. Although there is a lot of celebrating to do in Porto tonight, there are also some concerns from local residents that British people were not following some of the strict measures still in place, such as wearing a mask or not public drinking. Regardless, it is a part-me atmosphere as Chelsea won the Champions League final in Porto. Mia Alberti, CGTN, in Porto.
15 wild elephants are on the loose in southwest China after breaking out of a nature reserve. The herd has travelled nearly 500 kilometres in the past few weeks. Mark Kerr reports from Yunnan province, where the elephants have ransacked a village barn.
I'm now at the Dashuichong village in the city of Yuxi in Yunnan province, where the village has been broken into by a herd of 15 wild Asian elephants. Last night, five members of the herd has broken into this villager's barn. As you can see, they've knocked down the gate. If we take a closer look, here's a giant footprint on the gate, and as they entered the gate, you can see their giant body has grazed through the roof. For economic losses for this villager, the elephants have eaten most of his corn storage, which were meant to be feeding the pigs for the rest of the year. About 200 kilograms of corn have been eaten, and the elephants have also stepped on and killed 2 of the villagers' chickens, as well as setting free a jar of eels the villager is keeping to be sold at the market. Well, this is the elephants' latest vandalism after leaving their natural habitat in Xishuangbanna in April. The herd has traveled nearly 500 kilometers in the past 40 days, keeping a north or northeast trajectory. And now they're only 100 kilometers away from the downtown area of Kunming, provincial capital of Yunnan province.
Probably sightseeing. Mark Kerr reporting from Yunnan province. Still to come here on The World Today. How will West African leaders respond to the latest military coup in Mali? We're live in Accra next.
More than 100,000 people in Italy have now died from COVID-19.
The vaccination programme offers some hope for the future, but intensive care units are near capacity.
The Spanish government is hoping to vaccinate over 1 million people by next month.
Living in Germany are struggling with their mental health.
Hungary is supplementing the EU's vaccine rollout, buying doses from Russia and China to speed up the process.
4 million people have tested positive in France.
After a grim winter, the promise of a spring bloom that could mean freedom for millions.
Welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. A major climate summit opens in South Korea, looking at how the world can switch to greener economic growth. And the Chinese and Irish foreign ministers have been meeting to talk about trade cooperation amid a bumpy time in China-Europe relations. Mali's new military leader is in Ghana for emergency talks after the country's second coup in 9 months. Assimi Goïta was summoned by the 15-member Economic Community of West African States. Nabil Ahmed Rufai joins me now from the Ghanaian capital, Accra. What is the reason for the summit? I mean, what do the leaders want? I suppose some clarity about the takeover.
Indeed, the ECOWAS Extraordinary Summit, which is currently ongoing, is to seek clarity on the political situation in Mali. You know, after the junta, Colonel Assimi Goïta took over power a couple of days ago in a coup, he was actually the vice president, superseding the transition government, and all of a sudden he did a second coup and now named himself president of Mali. And this particular ECOWAS summit is to seek further information as to why he did this takeover. We already know that he has actually said that 2 military people who were serving in the government were sidelined in a cabinet, that the president, who was also the transition president at the time, had sidelined the 2 military leaders. So he actually was not happy about this issue and had to take over power, whilst also pledging that he would ensure elections sometime next year. But then this summit is to seek further information from him as to what led to the coup. The leaders are in session at the moment, deliberating among themselves. We know that at least 10 head of state or their representatives are present here, including the mediator, former president of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, is also present here for the deliberation. And the junta, Colonel Assimi Goïta, will be invited after this particular session to join them for further discussion on the political future of Mali.
If the leaders don't get, shall we say, satisfactory answers, could ECOWAS impose sanctions?
Well, the leaders have already made people aware that Mali, they are likely to reimpose sanctions on Mali as they did when the first coup happened sometime last year. You know, the ECOWAS bloc shut its borders to Mali, and this affected trade into the country and also affected financial inflows to Mali. So they are likely to reimpose this same sanction or even stiffer sanctions should they not get an amicable resolve with the junta. So yes, it's likely that sanctions will be reimposed on Mali based on this latest coup that has already happened. We know ECOWAS wants a civilian government in Mali, and with the military taking over every now and then, it's something that the leaders are not too happy about, and they want this thing to end as soon as possible.
Now, it doesn't sound or send a good message. What's been the response from the French president?
Well, the French President Emmanuel Macron has also not been happy about the latest coup. Indeed, he's been dissatisfied by the situation and has sent strong signal of withdrawing his troops from the country, which has suffered some insurgency for some years now, from the jihadist group. And this is something that he's been saying on and off again, but then with this, he's actually sent a strong signal or threat that he would withdraw the more than 5,000 troops that have been protecting some parts of Mali from these jihadist group. And if that should happen, then the situation in Mali is really going to get bad because they have struggled to contain these insurgency for a very long time, and the support from France with the over 5,000 troops have gone a long way to stabilize the country for a bit. And the political situation in Mali looks dire at the moment, and the outcome of this particular ECOWAS extraordinary summit would determine the future of the West African country.
Nabil Ahmed Rufai, many thanks for joining us from Accra. Let's take a brief look now at other stories making headlines around the world. Israeli opposition parties are reportedly closing in on a deal to oust the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the country's longest-serving leader. They have until Wednesday to form a coalition after Mr. Netanyahu failed to do so. Israeli media are reporting that Mr. Netanyahu could be replaced by far-right former settler leader Naftali Bennett under a deal with the country's centrist party. Israel's Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi has met his Egyptian counterpart in Cairo amid efforts to build a permanent ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, the group that governs the Gaza Strip. Egypt played a pivotal role in brokering a ceasefire between the two sides earlier this month, which ended the worst violence for some time. Cairo is working with the US and other regional partners towards solidifying the truce. More than 270 people, including dozens of children, have been rescued after a ferry caught fire in Indonesia's Malacca Sea. Many passengers managed to get onto lifeboats, others jumped into the water as flames and smoke engulfed the wrecked vessel. Search and rescue teams are still looking for one missing person. Initial reports suggest the fire may have started in the engine room. 2 people have died and more than 20 have been injured in a shooting near Miami in Florida. Police say 3 people got out of an SUV and began shooting indiscriminately into a crowd of people outside a music concert. The suspects then fled the scene. Germany has long been a nation of animal lovers, but the pandemic has sparked an increase in pet purchases. Animal rights activists are expressing concern over the surge, as Natalie Carney reports.
The Fleckar family began training their new pup after they got her from a Romanian rescue association last year.
This is Gina. We decided during the pandemic that it was time. During the lockdown, it really became apparent we're not going anywhere. We have nowhere to go, and it's a perfect opportunity to have a dog.
Madeline Nesbitt's family also grew during lockdown. She had more time and missed her previous dog, so thought it was a good time to add Avery to their family.
He's such an easy dog, and I have 3 kids, so I didn't expect it to be this easy.
Germany has the European Union's highest pet population. During these times of lockdowns, lost jobs, and working from home, people have found comfort in pets. Around 1 million domestic animals were adopted or bought in Germany in the last year, bringing the number to around 35 million.
We've heard from breeders' associations that there have been a lot of inquiries. That's also been the case at animal shelters, which were sometimes really overwhelmed. There are places where the whole cat house was actually empty and difficult long-term animals were finally rehoused.
Yet while these pets have new loving homes for now, animal rights activists are concerned for their futures. The Munich animal shelter is the second largest in the country and currently houses around 1,200 animals, from regular pets to some more exotic species.
If working from home decreases and people go back to the office and are not able to take the dog to work, what happens to it? What if the animal gets sick and incurs costs? Coronavirus has meant financial losses for many. We can predict that some people will have to give their pets up because they can no longer afford it. We've already had inquiries from people who now realise they're overwhelmed with the animal or they've got no time for it.
What
happens to these animals after lockdown ends is one thing, but there's also been a growing concern over the import of animals, both legal and illegal, to satisfy this surge in adoption demand.
The cost of buying certain animals has gone through the roof, leading to many people looking abroad. And there are growing reports of customs officers stopping animal smuggling across Europe.
We've seen a big boom in the illegal animal trade. Animals are being brought from Eastern Europe, far too young, torn away from their mothers and carted here to Germany. They're mostly sick, not immunised, not vaccinated, not socialised, and are then sold here on the internet. One could call it an animal mafia.
Lockdowns may last 1 or 2 years, but pets can live for 20.
I mean, your whole lifestyle really needs to be taken into account.
So how you find your new family member is just as important as how you care for it. Natalie Carney, CGTN in Munich.
Coming up next, it's Razor, CGTN Europe's flagship science and technology show. This week, why are grey whales dying off the west coast of Mexico and the US? Plus, a radical solution to climate change, the Icelandic power plant that is capturing CO and storing it permanently underground as rock. And that's Razor right after the world today at 16:30 GMT here on CGTN. China's Tianzhou-2 spacecraft has successfully docked with the core module of the country's new space station. The unmanned mission carried supplies, equipment and propellant to support future human missions. 9 more launches are planned over the coming months, adding further modules to the station. It's hoped that construction will be fully completed by the end of next year. Our main story again. A major international summit has opened in South Korea, looking at how climate targets can be met and how economies can grow greener. And that's it from the world today. Thanks for watching. More on all the stories we're covering online at europe.cgtn.com or search for CGTN in your app store. We're available on smart TV apps such as Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV. You can also find us on YouTube and Dailymotion as well, of course, at cgtn.com and on the CGTN app. From all the team here in London, from me, Stephen Cole. Goodbye.